There are moments in history that, if human beings could witness them with their own eyes, they would feel an overwhelming truth. The boundary between the visible world and the unseen heavens is far more fragile than they ever imagined. Those moments do not come often. They arrive only when the Creator wills to change the destiny of humanity. And when that happens, the sky, the earth, and the human heart all seem to tremble because of something beyond human understanding. The story you are about to hear is one of those moments. A night when a light that did not belong to this world slipped into a small cave and lit up a heart that would change the course of human history. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained. Before he became a prophet, Muhammad ibn Abdullah was not a man who chased power or status. He lived in a society drowning in dark customs, the oppression of the weak by the strong, slaves treated like objects, tribes constantly fighting and killing each other for the sake of honor, and lifeless idols being placed in the position that should have belonged to the truth. Yet in that suffocating atmosphere, there was one man who could not accept that distortion. He sought the stillness of the mountains, trying to listen for answers that the noisy world below could never provide. The cave of Hira became his refuge for long hours of contemplation, a place where he questioned the purpose of existence, the one who created all things, and the reason why human beings had gone so far astray. No one knows exactly what took place inside his soul during those silent nights. But it is clear that this heart was being prepared for something that no one else on earth could carry. There had already been signs, dreams that came true as clearly as seeing in daylight, powerful inner urges that drew him to solitude more and more. Yet no one, not even he himself, could have imagined that the sky was about to open and send down the final message to humanity. Then that night arrived. It was a night in the month of Ramadan, when the silence felt so deep that it was as if the entire universe was waiting. The cave of Hira was wrapped in darkness, and only the heart of the prophet was quietly beating. It was at the very moment when the darkness felt deepest that the first light appeared. In a moment that words can never fully capture, the angel Jibril appeared, carrying a majesty that seemed to shake the entire unseen world. A man who had grown used to the calm of the Rocky Mountains suddenly found himself face to face with a power beyond every human concept. Jibril did not begin with small talk, and he did not offer explanations. A command rang out like a bolt of lightning piercing the night. Read. Right there, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, a man who had never read or written, responded in astonishment that he did not know how to read. But the angel did not leave. He embraced him tightly with a strength that did not belong to human beings until his breath felt pressed and constricted. Then he repeated the command, read, once, then a second time, then a third time, sealing an event that would make humanity tremble for centuries every time it was retold. Then the very first verses of the Qur'an, the light that would change all of history, descended upon the earth. Read in the name of your Lord who created. He created the human being from a small, clinging form. Read, for your Lord is infinitely generous, the one who taught by the pen and taught human beings what they did not know. Those words were not only sound, they were a command to awaken humanity. They were a bridge between the universe and the heart of a humble man. They opened not only a new religion, but an era of knowledge, of awareness, and of freeing the soul from darkness. When the prophet returned home, he was trembling from an experience that no human language could fully describe. He went to Khadijah, the remarkable woman who saw the light inside him even when the world saw nothing at all. She comforted him with words that can only come from a heart that truly understands the value of a human being. She knew that Allah would never abandon a heart that lived in truth, compassion, and humility. When Waraka ibn Nawfal heard what had happened, he immediately understood that the veil of heaven had been lifted once more. That angel, That power, that command was the same that had come to Musa. A mission had just begun. Before we dive deeper into the magnificent journey of the Qur'an, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That simple action gives prophetic history explained more strength to bring you many more powerful stories. Stories that may transform the way you see the world forever. Not every revolution begins with an explosion. Some revolutions begin with a sentence, a light, or even just a breath. With the Qur'an, the revolution did not happen in one sudden burst. It unfolded over 23 years, a journey in which every verse and every word was sent down like raindrops that nurture the human soul and reshape an entire civilization. If the first part of the story is the moment when the heavens opened, then what came next was the slow, powerful process of that light soaking into human life. Gentle yet irresistible. The question of why the Qur'an was not sent down all at once has always made many people reflect. If Allah had willed, He could have given the entire book to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in a single night. But human beings are not program machines. Their hearts and minds need time to transform, to absorb, to turn knowledge into action. Allah, who knows every smallest movement of the human soul, chose to reveal the Qur'an in stages so that people would not only hear it but live with it. During the harsh years in Mecca, revelation came like a place of refuge. Whenever the small community of believers faced mockery and oppression, new verses were sent down to soothe their hearts and remind them that truth is never alone. The stories of Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, and the prophets before them were not told for entertainment. They were told to plant in the minds of the believers a powerful reality, that every messenger passed through trials and that those who remain steadfast are always supported by the one who sent them. As the persecution grew, the Qur'an did not promise an easy life. It made clear that hardship is part of the path and that faith is not a gift handed out without a price. The verses revealed at that time carried not only spiritual comfort but also the assurance that Allah was watching, guiding every step, and that the pain of the believers would never be meaningless. When the community migrated to Medina, the setting changed, and the way the Qur'an flowed into their lives also changed. Revelation now did more than heal wounds. It began to build a new society. Surah by surah, verse by verse, the Qur'an brought rules about justice, marriage, trade, war, and peace. It provided exactly what a young community needed in order to become an ordered society. It taught them to stand up against cruelty. It taught them how to treat their enemies. It taught them honesty in business and compassion in their dealings with others. What is remarkable is that every change came down through a gradual process. The prohibition of alcohol did not arrive as a sudden command. It unfolded step by step through warnings, through calls for self-restraint, until the entire community was ready to let go of that habit themselves. This is how the Qur'an educates. It does not simply impose. It does not demand instant perfection. It guides people through each step of maturity. Even the important events of the community were reflected in the Qur'an at the very moments they occurred. During the first great victory at Badr, revelation came to strengthen their spirit and to remind them that victory does not come from numbers or physical strength, but from the support of the Creator. In times of loss, new verses reminded them about patience and about the reward prepared for those who hold firmly to faith. The Qur'an did not just speak about life. It moved alongside life, mirrored it, guided it, and turned every moment of history into a sacred lesson. What is most astonishing is that even though the Qur'an was revealed over more than 2 decades in drastically different circumstances, it still maintains perfect coherence. The Makkan chapters focus on faith, resurrection, and the fate of earlier nations. The Madinan chapters go deeper into law and social conduct. These two streams merge into a single, flawless whole, so unified that many scholars have devoted their entire lives to studying the structure of the Qur'an, yet still could not reach the end of its subtle design. The wisdom of gradual revelation is not only about fitting the circumstances, it points to something greater, the inner transformation of human beings. If the Qur'an had been sent down all at once, people might have read it without having enough time to change. But when each portion descended in rhythm with real life, the heart had time to absorb, to reflect, to correct itself, and to grow. The Qur'an became a teacher, a companion, and a guide, not only through theory but through lived experience. 23 years of revelation is not a long period in human history, but it was long enough to give birth to a community, change a culture, and establish moral principles that still exist today. The Qur'an was never in a hurry. It came when people needed it. It came when hearts were ready. It left a mark that the world has not stopped marveling at. That is the wisdom of Allah, sending light down to the earth not as a single lightning strike, but as a sunrise spread across 23 years, so that every soul could see its path with clarity and certainty. In the history of humanity, no book has undergone a journey of preservation quite like the Qur'an. From the very first days when revelation still flowed from the breath of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the Qur'an was preserved not only as a sacred text, but as a living part of the community's heart. This process of preservation, stretching over generations and surviving war, loss, and political upheaval, became one of the strongest proofs of the sacred nature of the Qur'an and of Allah's protection over his final book. As soon as the first verses were revealed, they did not remain lying motionless on some page. They spread into the living memories of the sahaba. The Arabs of that time were gifted with extraordinary memory, and they saw memorizing the Qur'an not only as a command, but as an honor. Whenever a portion of the Qur'an was sent down, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would recite it to the companions. They would repeat it again and again until every word and every sound matched exactly what the angel Jibril had delivered. The Qur'an was not something they read only with their eyes. They read it with their breath, with their voices, and with their heartbeat. In that sense, the Qur'an became part of them in a very literal way. Alongside memorization, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, carefully appointed a group of scribes of revelation to write down the verses on the simplest of materials. Palm leaves, leather pieces, shoulder bones of animals, and thin stones. But these were not just scattered notes. The Prophet instructed precisely where each verse should be placed in each chapter, so that the structure of the Qur'an would remain exactly as Allah intended. There was no randomness and no improvisation. Everything followed a preordained order, even when that order was beyond the full understanding of people at that time. Every year in the month of Ramadan, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would recite the entire Qur'an with the angel Jibril. This was not just a review, it was a sacred form of confirmation, like a divine seal placed upon every verse. In the final year of his life, the Prophet recited the Qur'an with Jibril twice. This event made the sahaba realize that he was preparing for his final journey, and that the Qur'an needed to be perfectly preserved after his departure. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, returned to Allah, the Qur'an was already alive in the hearts of many. But history never stands still. The Battle of Yamama, one of the most difficult battles during the time of Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, led to the deaths of many who had memorized the Qur'an. Their sacrifice shook Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him. He began to worry. If those who carried the Qur'an in their hearts continued to fall in battle, could any part of the revelation be lost? Not because the Qur'an was weak, but because human beings had the responsibility to safeguard what Allah had entrusted to them. Umar went to Abu Bakr with a proposal that had never been made during the lifetime of the Prophet: to gather all written pieces, compare them with the living memories of those who had memorized the Qur'an, and compile everything into a complete mushaf. At first, Abu Bakr hesitated, because this felt like something completely new compared to the time of the Prophet. But when he understood that this was not an innovation in the religion, but a means to preserve what Allah had revealed, he agreed. Zayd ibn Thabit, who was both a scribe of revelation and an outstanding memorizer of the Qur'an, was given this heavy responsibility. He did not rely only on his own memory, even though he was one of the best in memorization. He collected every written fragment, checked them with those who had memorized the Qur'an, and only when all proofs matched perfectly was a verse allowed into the mushaf. The work was like rebuilding a palace from scattered stones, but with no room for even the slightest mistake. The result was a single mushaf, which was kept by Hafsa, the daughter of Umar and wife of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. The trial, however, was not over. As Islam spread into Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and beyond, differences in dialect began to affect how people recited the Qur'an. New Muslims tried to imitate the recitation they heard, but regional accents created variations that could lead to disputes. Uthman ibn Affan, may Allah be pleased with him, understood that a rapidly growing community could not allow the revelation to become a source of division. He made a historic decision: to standardize the written Qur'an according to the dialect of Quraysh, the dialect in which the Qur'an was revealed. He assembled a group of knowledgeable companions, led once again by Zayd ibn Thabit, to make exact copies of the original mushaf. These copies were sent to the main centers of the Muslim world, along with skilled reciters who could teach the correct way to recite. To avoid confusion, Uthman requested that any personal copies that did not fully match the standardized mushaf be removed. This was not the destruction of knowledge. It was a step that saved the revelation from fragmentation. From that time until today, even though the world has changed thousands of times over, the Qur'an has remained unchanged, letter for letter and sound for sound. Millions of people across the globe still memorize it from beginning to end, reciting it in the same way, without a single difference in the wording. There is no other book in human history that has been preserved so perfectly in both written form and in the hearts of people as the Qur'an. This is what continues to amaze humanity. The Qur'an has been preserved not only by human effort, but by the promise of the one who sent it down. Human beings were only the instruments. The perfection of the Qur'an is a living proof that the speech of Allah still echoes on this earth, unchanged, unfaded, and impenetrable. When many people look at the Qur'an, they assume that it is a book meant only for Muslims. But anyone who has ever truly listened to its recitation can feel that its message touches something deep inside the human soul. A place where all differences of language, culture, and era no longer matter. The Qur'an does not speak only to a single tribe, a certain land, or a narrow group of believers. It speaks to humanity as a whole. It speaks to the heart. It speaks to that core part inside every person where there is a thirst for justice, truth, purpose, and meaning. That is why the Qur'an is universal, even though it was revealed in a small corner of the Arabian Peninsula. From its very first verses, we see a clear invitation that is not limited to believers. It calls out, "O mankind." This is not a barrier, it is an opening. It is like the voice of a teacher standing at a crossroads, calling out to anyone who feels lost to come and find direction again. The strange thing is that whether the listener lives in the 7th century or the 21st century, that call still carries the same waking power. The Qur'an draws people's attention back to connections that they often forget. The perfect order of the universe, the delicacy of every living cell, the balance of nature, the unseen laws that govern every movement. It does not force belief, it urges reflection. It encourages people to observe, to think, to question, and to recognize the traces of a wisdom far beyond human intellect. This is how the Qur'an reconciles reason and faith. It does not deny science, and it does not reject critical thinking. It brings them closer together. What makes the Qur'an miraculous is not only its content, but also its language. The Arabs of that time were masters of speech. Their entire culture was built on the power of words. But in front of the Qur'an, even the proudest poets fell silent. Every verse is concise yet thunderous, gentle yet sharp, abstract yet concrete. The words of the Qur'an are not just words. They flow like a river of sound that every listener can feel, but no one can reproduce. No one has been able to imitate the Qur'an. It is not only because its structure breaks beyond normal patterns of language, but because of the living energy in the way it links ideas, paints images, and moves the heart. A single verse can carry a meaning that speaks to ordinary people, and at the same time can keep a scholar busy for an entire lifetime. That same verse, when read in a different situation, can open an entirely new layer of understanding. This is the multi-layered nature of the Qur'an, something no human work has ever truly achieved. The Qur'an is also one of the rare books that not only describes the spiritual world, but also sets out moral principles that can apply to every society. It speaks about justice, compassion, responsibility, and honesty. It speaks about the rights of the poor, the duty of the wealthy, the value of integrity, and the danger of arrogance. These things do not belong to a single era. They belong to human nature itself. No matter how advanced a society becomes, the need for justice, mercy, and morality never disappears. The Qur'an offers a timeless framework for these needs. One of the clearest marks of the Qur'an is how it transformed the early Arabian society. That land, once divided by endless hatred and shaped by brutal and indifferent customs, was turned into a community built on equality, respect, and accountability. The Qur'an destroyed the idea that one person is better than another simply because of skin color, tribe, or wealth. It established the principle that the real worth of a human being is measured by their consciousness of Allah and the righteousness of their actions. These teachings did not only change the Arabs, they shaped the entire Islamic civilization, spread across continents, and left an influence that still reaches into the present day. The Qur'an also challenges humanity with prophecies and declarations that were ahead of their time. Some of its references to the natural world, the development of the embryo, or the expansion of the universe were only discovered by science many centuries later. The Qur'an does not present itself as a science textbook, but it hints at truths in a way that continues to astonish modern minds. The way the Qur'an engages the intellect without forcing and makes the listener think deeply is one of the secrets behind its enduring life. All of this makes the Qur'an a book for every age. As the world changes, as human beings enter the age of technology or face new crises, the need for truth and purpose remains. The Qur'an never becomes outdated because it is not tied to a single culture or philosophy. It is the speech of the one who fully knows human nature in every era. That is why it continues to guide millions of hearts, even after more than 14 centuries. The Qur'an is not just a book to read. It is the call of the Creator to all of humanity, inviting them to look again at themselves and at the world around them. It is a bridge between reason and faith, between the universe and the heart, between the past and the present. This is why the Qur'an is a miracle that never fades, a miracle that continues to spread, to challenge and to heal humanity even today. In the noise of modern life, where people are swept away by speed, pressure, and nameless anxieties, it is easy for a book like the Qur'an to sit quietly on a shelf, more as a religious symbol than a real companion. Yet the Qur'an was never revealed to be a decoration. It was sent down to step into people's lives, to touch the deepest corners of the soul, and to guide them through the unpredictable turns of life. When we look back at the 23-year journey of revelation, we realize that the Qur'an does not only tell stories of the past, it is waiting for people today to open it and live with it. What makes the Qur'an special is not only that it is the speech of the Creator, it is also the way it speaks to a person at every stage of life. There are days when we feel strong, and the Qur'an reminds us to be grateful. There are nights when we are drowning in fear, and the Qur'an comes as reassurance. There are moments when we stand at a crossroads, uncertain of which way to go, and the Qur'an becomes a compass. You do not need to be a scholar or fluent in Arabic to feel this. You only need a heart that genuinely wants the truth, and the Qur'an will respond. Many people think that reading the Qur'an is a duty, but in reality it is a gift. Every verse that is recited does not only bring reward, it calms the storms inside the mind. The rhythm of the Qur'an, even when the listener does not fully understand every meaning, can wash the heart like clear water flowing through dry land. That is why millions around the world turn to the Qur'an in their most lost moments. It does not promise a life without pain, but it offers balance, a sense that even if the world is falling apart, there is still a safe place to return to. However, the Qur'an does not stop at comfort. It invites each person into a journey of self-improvement. Memorizing the Qur'an, even just a few verses, is like placing a source of light inside your heart. When a verse is memorized, it becomes a silent reminder. It makes a person think before acting, helps them remain calm in anger and patient in hardship. Those who memorize the Qur'an do not carry only the words of Allah in their minds. They carry those words into their actions, their speech, and their view of the world. Still, the ultimate purpose of the Qur'an is not only to be recited or memorized. It was revealed to be understood and lived. Every verse contains a lesson about morality, responsibility, justice, and humility. It teaches people to stand up for what is right, even when that stand makes them feel alone. It teaches them to love and honor their parents, to care for the vulnerable, to protect the truth, and to stay far away from deceit. When an individual lives according to the Qur'an, their life changes. When many individuals change together, society changes with them. If we look back at earlier generations, we can see this clearly. The strongest Muslim communities in history were not great because of wealth or population size. They were great because they placed the Qur'an at the center of everything they did. They did not confine it to prayer times. They allowed the Qur'an to guide trade, marriage, education, justice, and even their smallest decisions. The Qur'an became their compass, telling them when to be patient, when to struggle, when to forgive, and when to stand firm against injustice. Today, many people feel that life has become directionless, with too many choices and too little meaning. In that setting, the Qur'an is a reminder that human beings were not created without purpose. It asks questions that wake the heart. Why do we exist? Where are we going? What truly has value? These questions may sound distant, but they are the foundation under every daily decision. Once a person understands their purpose, fear becomes lighter. Trials gain meaning, and every success leads them back to gratitude. The Qur'an is also a place where people can rediscover hope. In its pages, Allah does not hide the fact that life includes hardship. He acknowledges pain, loss, and the tests that human beings must face. But He also promises that after every difficulty there will be ease, that no one is tested beyond what they can bear, and that His mercy is always open to those who turn back to Him. There is no other book that speaks to people with such honesty. It does not paint life as perfect, and it does not leave people abandoned in the dark. The greatest gift that the Qur'an offers is the connection it builds between a person and Allah. There is no need for a human intermediary and no complicated ritual to reach him. The connection is through his own revealed words. When a person opens the Qur'an, they are engaging in a direct conversation with the one who created them. When they bring their questions, the Qur'an responds with verses that have been waiting for them for centuries. This bond is what makes the human heart firm in a world that constantly changes. The Qur'an is not only the heritage of one religion, it is a light available to anyone who truly wants to find the truth. When a person opens their heart to it, the Qur'an becomes a compass, a shelter, and a source of strength to live a more meaningful life. Every time we open the Qur'an, the door of guidance opens again, reminding us that light never disappears. It only waits for us to turn back toward it. The deepest lesson from the journey of the Qur'an is this: light shines only into the life of the one who opens the door of the heart. The Qur'an can sit on a shelf, it can be recited out loud, it can be heard in countless lectures, but it becomes guidance only when we allow it to enter our thoughts, our choices, and our actions. So every listener today can begin with a very small but incredibly meaningful step. Open the Qur'an, read a few verses, reflect for a few minutes, and ask yourself where these words are trying to lead you. From those small steps, an entire life can change. In the restlessness of the modern world, the lessons of the Qur'an can be applied in very practical ways. When we feel lost, we can let the Qur'an redefine our values. When we feel angry or hopeless, we can let the Qur'an teach us patience. When we face important decisions, we can let the Qur'an remind us of justice and integrity. When the heart feels exhausted, we can let the Qur'an lull it back into a peace that nothing else can offer. If you would like to continue exploring the stories, lessons, and profound meanings behind the history of revelation, you are warmly invited to join the Prophetic History Explained community so that you will not miss any journey of knowledge. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel so that we have more motivation to bring you even more valuable content in the videos to come.